This is Ritesh. Welcome to part 4 of the screencast series on learning Git. In this screencast, you will learn to create and clone a Git repository via the command line as well as by using a graphic user interface based client. Let's start with the command line. Since I'm on a Windows machine, I will be using the PowerShell terminal. We can also use the command line window, or if you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, you can use the terminal window on that machine. In order to create a Git repository, you need to use the init command like so. Git init and the name of your repository. In my case, I'm calling it my repo. Once you're done, hit enter. This has created an empty Git repository called my repo. We can verify this by listing the contents of this directory like so. Before you proceed further, you need to be within the repository folder to perform Git commands. So I'm going to change my directory to my repo. We can verify the creation of the repository by using the status command like so. Git status. You'll notice that Git has created a master branch by default. Next, let's see how to clone an existing repository using the command line. Before you proceed, you'll need a URL for your Git repository. I'm going to show you an example using GitHub and my own repository called OAuth service. I'll include the URL in the description if you wish to clone the same repository. In order to clone a repository, we'll need to make use of the clone command like so. Git clone and the URL to your repository. Once you're done, hit enter. Git has completed cloning the repository onto my local machine. I can verify this by looking up the contents of the current directory, like so. We can also use the git status command to verify the cloning. But before we do so, we need to be within the folder of the repository. So I'm going to change my directory to OAuth service. Once inside, let's use git status. Here you can see that Git has cloned the master branch from OAuth service. Now let's use a graphic user interface client to create and clone a Git repository. In my case, I'll be using source tree. First thing you need to do is set a destination path. This can be a folder on your local machine. I'll call the repository my repo. Once you're done, you hit create. This has created a repository called my repo. Alright, next I want to show you how to clone a repository using graphic user interface based client. I'm going to use the same URL for OAuth service that I used previously. For this, click on clone. In the source path, you'll need to provide the URL to your Git repository. The destination path is a local path on your machine. I'm going to replace the default path with my preferred path, like so. Once you're done, click on clone. Now you can see the Git repository is being cloned on my local machine, and by default it's pulled the master branch down, and you can see the history on the master branch. I hope you have learned to create and clone a Git repository by now. Join me in the next screencast where we will learn to use common Git commands via the command line.